But I'd like to formally welcome you to this event. It is the 61st anniversary since the Dragonfly AFB took off from this very international airport. We were together last February for the 60th anniversary, but as you'll remember, the pandemic made it difficult, particularly for the Rowan family, to come from Australia, so we postponed to today. But it is an anniversary day, the 12th of February, and this is a day we pay tribute to those 5 who are on the plane who are still missing and lost. I want to again just acknowledge the generous hospitality of the Canterbury Aero Club. Wonderful that they could make the facilities available here. Some of you will know the Dragonfly AFB was operated by the club as their first post-war twin from 1946 to 1956. So it was well used here from the airport. So thanks again to Mark Reeves and Jeremy Ford and Pat Scotter and the presidents here somewhere too. So just wonderful to have that support. We do have a number of apologies who have been names that have been sent. So Robin Fortley from the UK, but you'll be seeing them on screen in just a few minutes. Lou Bone, Brian Suter, Thelma Stebbing, who worked for Trans Island Airways with Brian Chadwick, Mark Chadwick, Don Eadie, Hank Sproul from Air Milford, Conway Powell, and Simon Spencer Bauer. So they are names that have been formally came through communication to me from folks who can't be here. You'll have the information from the PowerPoints of what's available, but we'll be underway with our first presentation soon. As I mentioned, the books, particularly the Lost book, which is all about the mystery, we have very limited copies left, so these are amongst the last that are available. We do have members of the family of 2 of those who are on the Dragonfly. Glenys Nielsen and her husband, all the way from Gisborne. And Glenys is a niece of Valerie Bignell. And we have about 6 members of the Rowan family from Sydney, and John here, who's younger brother of Lewis. And John's kindly agreed to just bring a greeting, and you'll hear a nice, fresh Australian accent.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. And I would also like to express my appreciation to the Canterbury Aero Club and Mark Reeves for allowing us into this beautiful venue. I've been in this venue on 3 occasions, and every occasion has been just like this. Beautiful. There's 6 in our touring group this time. My wife Susan, my brother-in-law Laszlo Kochis, who was married to my sister Lucy, Laz's son Peter and his wife Megan, and another nephew Kevin Rowan, who was the son of my brother Frank. I first met Richard Waugh in 2004, and by coincidence he made contact with me, and 4 weeks later myself and 4 of my brothers and our wives were doing a bus tour of New Zealand, and we were able to meet with Richard in a motel room in Auckland. Absolutely phenomenal that it could work out like that. And we were able to give Richard quite a bit of information for the book and for bits and pieces that were recorded in the book, like letters. In 2006, on this day in 2006 in this room, the book was launched. A magnificent book, and I pay tribute to Richard for the book. I also pay tribute to Peter Lynn, who worked with Peter on the book, and to Graham McConnell, who worked on the book and contributed a great amount to the great book that it is. I've also had the opportunity over the years to meet some wonderful people. I've met wonderful pilots that are very happy to talk about it. I was able to meet Tony Chadwick, the son of Brian Chadwick, which was just magnificent to be able to do that. I met quite a number of the Bignell family when we unveiled the monument up at Wanaka. So that's been a great opportunity for me. When Richard released the book on that day, he said, "I hope this stirs interest of people will come out and try and search for this plane." On that day, I thanked all the fellow pilots that had flown with Brian Chadwick, excuse me, that had continually searched for that plane for years and years. But today, I pay tribute to the new searchers, the people that are putting an enormous effort into going out there and trying to locate this plane. The Reeve family were very generous with their time, with myself and my family on Thursday, and Gavin Rimmer was very generous with his time yesterday with our family, and I really appreciate that. On behalf of my siblings and the extended family, I'd just like to say a great thank you to these people. It is very much appreciated what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, the younger brother of Lewis. John was 15 and your brother was lost. I should also mention a veteran pilot here too, Russell Troon. Just put your hand up there, Russell. Russell, a commercial pilot in Queenstown from 1953, and knew Chadwick and flew extensively in Dominies and Cessnas from Queenstown. So Russell's really a very significant person to have here today. Now, before we begin our first presentation from Robin Fortley from the UK, I think it's appropriate that we just pause and pay tribute to those who were on the plane on the 12th of February 1962. So can I ask you to be upstanding as we have a minute's silence and a dedication prayer. Eternal Creator God, we remember the de Havilland Dragonfly as it took off from this international airport 61 years ago today, and name before you those on board. Brian Jeffrey Chadwick, Lewis Rowan, Sydney Elwyn Saville, Valerie Gay Saville, nee Bignell, Daryl Stanley Shields. May our gathering this day contribute in some way to the aircraft finally being located. This is our earnest prayer through Jesus Christ. Amen. Please be seated. Folks, Robin Fortley, who we'll see just in a moment on the screen, relates to the story in this way. If you're familiar with the Lost Book, this photograph on the back of the book is a group in January 1962, just a matter of 3 weeks before the ill-fated flight. And Robin is the young 13-year-old who's in the midst of the photograph. So this was a flight from Brian Chadwick and his other aircraft, the Domini ZK-BCP. So Robin's in the UK, he's very informed, and he's going to speak to us for about 16 minutes, including a very rare 8mm film of that flight from Christchurch, Milford Sound in Domini. This is Chadwick's other aircraft, and then we'll just have a few minutes for any clarifying questions before we move on. So thank you to Adam and Simon Reeve, who have done wonderful technical support with Bobby to enable us to operate this afternoon. Thank you.
I'm Robin Fortley. I'm the 13-year-old that was in the video of one of the last flights that Captain Brian Chadwick flew in BCP way back in 1962. This is where it all started, in actual fact. Immediately behind me is where Brian Chadwick went to school at Margate, just at the other side of the water here, and then further around behind me this way was Ashford, where he finished off his schooling in, I think it was 1920 or 1930. So this is where it all started. And behind where I'm standing, there is also Southend Airport, and next to there is where Brian's mother and father lived, and we took the film way back in 1962 for them to see. Just one other thing, immediately behind me as well, you may be able to see the signs of a wreck. That's the Moby Harbour, and behind that is another wreck called the Richmond Montgomery, which I'm quite sure Gavin Grimmer will have heard all about because it's twinned with the North Head Bowings and the website of Martin Butler. So this is where it all started, as far as I was concerned. And of course, you are all 13,000 miles away, and I'm very, very sorry that I can't be with you. Anyway, greetings to you all, and we carry on from here. Here we are embarking 8 passengers into the Domini owned by Brian Chadwick, mid-January 1962 at Harewood Airport, now Christchurch Airport. After taxiing down the runway to the south end, we take off to the north into a hazy sky, and then after a left-hand turn fly back past Christchurch Airport at low level. After a short flight across the Canterbury Plains and over Hororata, we are now looking downstream over the south branch of the Ashburton River, passing the Black Mountain Ranges. Lake Tekapo, a very young passenger who's thoroughly enjoying himself. I know that was me. Now into Glacier Land, we're seeing the Murchison Glacier, the Tasman Glacier, all from various different angles, and of course with a lot more ice. There's a lot of cloud cover, and we're circling quite a lot, as you can see from the angle of the wing. That's the Godley Glacier. Looking down, that's Joseph Glacier. So we're out in the mountains and we're overflying Haas airstrip, the Arawata River, crossing over Woodhen Creek with Mountain Delta behind us. Cascade River. Lake Wilmot. And now Lake Macquarie. We're just crossing the Kaipo River and Martins Bay. We aren't much higher, if we are higher at all, than Lion Rock on Ruby Beach. 164 feet. You can just see maybe we're just a tad higher than that, but there's low level flying along the coast. Now, for some reason or other, unfortunately my father missed filming the entry into Milford Sound, so I'm afraid you're going to have to make do with overflying Milford, making a tight turn to come into runway 29 into wind. Actually, it's into a very strong crosswind, as you can see from the windsock. So we spent a little while in Milford. We just had sandwiches, and I think the rest of the passengers went off and had a slap-up meal with that. Cessna 180 appears to be chancing his arms. That's the Bowen Falls, which we'll see later as we're climbing out of Milford, trying to gain height to the west of the airstrip. And it was an airstrip in those days, as you can well see. It's totally different nowadays, of course. Here we are, just a gentle takeoff. And clearly we're trying to gain enough height. Now we're coming back over the airstrip and we are entering the Arthur River and Lake Ada, and we come almost to the Sutherland Falls. There we are, we can just see Sutherland Falls, and we're going towards it now. What happened between that shot and this next one coming in here? We're clearly over the Vaughan River, coming out over the western arm of Wakatipu, well down, well clear of Pigeon and Pig Islands. Now where we went after Sutherland Falls, in order to get through the mountains, heaven only knows. And then here's the outskirts of Queenstown. We didn't do a direct approach to land at Queenstown to refuel there. Then comes the float plane with a large bag of trout. Brian Chadwick is given one, and he's also given cooking instructions. Lake Wanaka and Clutha River, finishing off with Lake Bukaki. And now we're at Christchurch Airport. So where was our flight? Right, it was from Christchurch, of course, through to the Two Thumbs, which I'm filming here roughly, more or less, Lake Coleridge, Mount Taylor, all the way through to the west coast, and I think we just passed the most likely place for EBU, which is the Meraki River, and I'm sure it's there until we come right the way down past Wakatipu down to Milford Sound. Why did I take 60 years before I came up with that old 8mm standard film? It's a bit of a long story, but cutting it down, pandemic came in. My grandson, who's actually born in New Zealand, needed a project to do for school. And they were all stuck at home, so they're having to go on the internet. I recollected the time when I flew with my parents 60 years ago in 1962, and so I thought it would be a good idea for him to study this air crash using the internet, which is what he was supposed to do, and see what happened. But then I got cold feet, because I remembered that one of his mother's friends, dear friend Hannah Timings, came to New Zealand, and unfortunately she was lost in a helicopter crash. So I thought I'd better check it out, make sure that there are no problems for him to find out what might have happened there if his parents hadn't really gone through it very carefully with him. Well, as it is, Gavin Grimmer, if you're there, you know all about HNW, Cam Montgomery and Hannah Timings. 8mm film, the old standard 8, was very expensive by comparison with today's price. To get 1 minute of 8 standard film would cost nowadays the equivalent of about £3,400, which is quite a fair amount of money. So when you're talking about 9 or 10 minutes of this type of film, it just shows how rare these are. Not many places in New Zealand had these cameras, and my parents actually had 2 cameras, and that caused a lot of problems for both Simon Reeve and Gavin Grimmer in trying to sort things out. But here we are, is the entrance, I think, to Lake Wakatipu and the islands at the top of there. Now this is after we'd landed at Queenstown, and that's Hawea, I think it is, and Wanaka. And I'm sure that the Dragonfly is somewhere around this area, but that's my personal opinion, and please don't quote me on it. And here we are back at Christchurch. Doubtless you will have seen the 8-minute or 7-minute film of the YouTube clip of BCP, but these are the outtakes, and quite a fascinating story about it. And I'm just going to play it for a time. There's little clips here and there, and I'm sure that both Simon Reeve and Gary Grimmer will be familiar with these, and they could tell you a lot more about these films than ever I could. But it does prove what it was. Now here's the entrance to Milford Sound, which I thought we had missed. But it's a very, very poor film, and this is why they were taken out of the original film by my parents. And of course everything's out of order. Here we are back at some of the other early parts of the west coast after we'd flown through or across, perhaps whether it was Wataroa Gorge or wherever else. But anyway, here we are. Now we just come into land at Milford. Very, very poor filming here, but it's the only film that there is, and this is where I think I need to stop the actual film, and just make a few comments about the film. I had a search on the internet first of all, make sure that young Jack Norris wasn't going to be searching for something or other that his mother wouldn't approve of, and I came across a rather funny website with some individuals called the White Bus Family, and they have motor vehicles that they took up a river, and I now know that was the Hopkins and the Huxley River, and they treated these Land Rovers more like submarines than wheeled vehicles. What a fascinating family they are. Anyway, I got in touch with them, and I emailed and got an email straight back. I was introduced via Simon to Richard and Alec Waugh, and then that chap called Gavin Grimmer. And I came across this website, and Find Lost Aircraft is one of the finest websites that there is for dealing with the aircraft that have gone missing in this part of New Zealand, plus one, of course, in Australia. And then the North Head Boeings, he's trying to find those. Well, we all know that they're actually in North Head in Auckland Harbour. But an eminent judge, an eminent New Zealand judge by the name of Sean Elias, has guaranteed sort of 51% to 49% that probably they ain't there. And so everybody's very, very safe. And the fact that it's got loads of armaments and ordnance that might well be breaking up and causing a problem there, they certainly aren't there. Well, we've got a similar thing like that called the Richard Montgomery, and you can look it up. It's in the Thames estuary, and it's got about 5,000 tons of bombs on board, and it's ready to explode at any time.
Right. That was Robin Fortley from the UK. Put a lot of time into preparing that presentation for us. This very rare 8mm film from, I think it's the 19th of January 1962, just 3 weeks before the flight in the Dragonfly. So what you saw there, just a reminder, the Domini BCP. Now we've just got a few minutes before we go to Gavin's presentation. Are there any sort of general questions that I may be able to have a go at answering with regards to what Robin has shared? Yes. Yeah, just down here in front. Yeah. Can we lift the screen up a bit? No, I think probably up so people on the back can...
They can see that video on the Stuff website.
Yeah, that's right. So if you look on the big article by Mike White and Stuff yesterday, it was also printed in the press, you can see the clip of the flight, correct. Now the man behind, yeah.
Yes, I just say, Peter Graham's my name. I flew as a passenger with Brian Chadwick about a week before he crashed. So it was between the video and the fatal flight. About my family flew with him about a week to 10 days immediately prior, and I have vivid memories of the flight. It was in perfect weather conditions, and we flew the same flight path as was shown.
Yeah, just seen there, right.
And it's amazing how 60 years later one can remember, but I have been spooked for the last 60 years, and if my parents had bought the ticket a week later, I wouldn't be here. So
yeah, do you remember what was on was it on the Domini or the Dragonfly?
Well, I can't remember.
Can't remember.
But if obviously the flight logbooks would show that.
Yeah, they're not available. The Domini was out of action from the 31st of January. So from after the 1st of February, it was the Dragonfly. So if you're only a week, it could well have been the Dragonfly.
I was a week to 10 days.
Week to 10 days. Right. Very good. Oh, very good. It's terrific. Any other sort of comments on what Robin's had to say? Right, thank you. We'll see if we can get a bit more height. That'll be easier for you guys down the back. Yeah, okay. Right. We're going to get Gavin to take over the mic in a minute. I should just mention too the lost books here. We launched some years ago, soft copy. They've all gone. These are some of the very last of the hardcover copies from 2006. So when they're gone, they won't be available again. So do grab one if you don't have one already. Right, that's going to be a bit of a help. Yeah. And Gavin will mention this, but his own website, Find Lost Aircraft, all the information is there. So Find Lost Aircraft, and you heard Robin's great commendation of the website. Not only the Dragonfly that Gavin has been looking for, but a number of other aircraft that are lost in New Zealand and one in Australia. Okay, Mr. Grimmer, here we are.
Now, a lot of it I'll probably try and read off, but I've got 44 slides to go through in 1 hour, so I'm going to have to go like the clappers. But what I did, I put written in as much as I possibly can so that you can download this later, which I've got printed off a pile of cards here with the link for you, and you can download it and go through it in detail, because there's a lot of information in it. A lot of it is real brand new, because a lot of it I sort of worked it out, got new information and stuff since when I was asked to present this, and one thing led to another, as it does, and lots of things surprised me as well. So I'm putting forward a whole new scenario on this. So, anyway, I better not keep talking. I better get into it.
I'll press the button.
Oh, okay. I think we covered most of that. Although I initially thought AFB had gone down the Jacobs River, and our team spent many a trip in there searching there to no avail. After Robin Faultley came up with this video, his parents had taken a flight by Chadwick around, we think it was around about the 20th of January, 1962. I realised I'd been considering the way Chadwick flew was different to the way we fly today. We've got the benefit today. Lots of people died doing what they thought was the normal sort of flying, and we found out now the things to avoid, so it doesn't happen so much. And so Chadwick was one of the people that pioneered a lot of stuff that makes it safer for us to fly. Next one. Much of what is shown in the movie is not so much of what is seen, but what is not seen. As an example, I think Robin covered this, 8mm celluloid was expensive and rather time-consuming due to the process of developing it. So scenery that could be filmed anywhere in the world, such as above cloud, would not be filmed. Hence, large gaps in the footage, such as from the western side of Mount Cook down to Haast, well, it's actually down to the Waitara River, which we picked up in the offcuts, which was 6 miles north of Haast, were pretty obviously not filmed due to that reason. So the footage in the Haast area shows patchy cloud below them, adding to this belief. So, Mount Cook down to Waitara River is quite a long way. The footage of Robin as a teenager, if you look closely, shows total whiteout on the windows, and probably why his mother took the time to deter from the scenery to show it. Applying this newfound knowledge, I then had another look at Peter Polson's sighting, which was one of the best in the whole South Island, because he gave the colour, 2 engines and a biplane. Nobody else gave the full description of it. I've spent many years examining many eyewitnesses' accounts on the Cessna 210 VH-MDX that disappeared in Australia in 1981, and although there have been massive searches for that one every year since, it has eluded everyone, and I spent a lot of time going through trying to help them out, because they just seem to be, doing it all wrong anyway. But however, I gained a lot of experience in understanding how the memory works and common mistakes often made. And one of them is pretty common, getting east and west mixed up. Peter Polson's sighting always bothered me, as if you believed his observation in the official report of seeing it fly southwest pretty much right over the top of him. Then for this claim given on his deathbed of seeing it fly into Jacobs River Valley, then he had to have seen it twice. Now, a lot of this might be a bit strange to you, and I forgot to mention right at the beginning, I wrote a book, I think 3 years after Richard's, that was a sequel to Richard's, because I was that enthused by what Richard put in there. And I examined it a lot more, and you can download that book free on that link of these cards, whatever, or you can find it on my website. And you'd need to read my book probably to understand but if I went through that, you'd be here next week. Anyway, then it became obvious, going by what I'd observed, he saw it fly in the direction of southwest, not southeast. And if you place this direction on Google Earth, it takes you directly into the Jacobs. That's Peter Polson's place there, and if you go southeast, go straight into it. And my original theory was based on him, on the deathbed confession that Colin Tucks here can testify to. He had, that was a confusing part, and that's why I thought it originally flown south, got caught in an updraft and come back over the top and went back down again. But anyway, now it starts to make a lot more sense. Hang on. Oh yeah, it starts to make a lot more sense. The two ladies out at Hunts Beach, which was about, I think about 5 miles or something, further across from the entrance to the Jacobs River, they heard aircraft engines turning on and off, and obviously observing, from observing Chadwick's flying habits via the 8mm movie, it now became obvious he wasn't descending down through a hole like I thought, he was actually ascending. And he'd come down the coast as far as I believe, and he'd seen it was clouded in, so instead of, he could see straight up Jacobs River and see the sun shining on the ground. So he's gone straight into there, and he's done one or two orbits climbing up, and each time he come round, the exhausts would be pointing towards Jacobs River, and that's what these women were here. 2 separate women, 2 sisters, I think, in 2 different houses. From there it went down to a deer shooter in the Mount Trent area, reports hearing aircraft above cloud. Report 37, this is the reports written in Richard Rawls' book from the official reports. Report 37, Gordon Ferguson, working between the Moeraki and the Wakapopai rivers, heard a plane the headwaters of the Moeraki River and estimated about 20 miles inland. He shortly afterwards heard the usual West Coast Airways flying back to Hokitika, well out to sea. Report 42, Mount Aspiring Station reported 4 people, station manager and 3 employees, heard an aircraft in the Mount Aspiring area at 11:30, travelling on a line from north of Mount Aspiring to generally south towards Shotover. But on page 36 in Lost, Aspiring cloud base about 6,000 feet with little wind. 3 people heard the aircraft for about 10 minutes above cloud. 1 reported hearing it flying towards Mount Niger. Another looked at his watch and noted it was 11:50. I think these 3 station hands actually reported as heard it in report 42. It was probably interlinked, so it's probably same report. One thing that's mainly overlooked is Chadwick had what was known as a new toy in those days up his sleeve, an electronic compass, otherwise known as an ADF, which is an automatic direction finder. Page 59 in Lost, it was actually a Piper auto-nav radio compass. There appears to be a phenomenon in aviation that when a new device comes on the market, for instance GPS, some pilots think it is the best thing since sliced bread and will utilise it to such an extent that they end up taking huge risks and sometimes killing themselves, and I've known some of these people. One well-known example was the Hughes 500, which you can read about on my website. He thought he was bulletproof, he had a GPS and he could fly into Milford Sound on using his GPS in solid cloud. An ADF is all but useless on the west coast, as all you needed to do was follow the coast and the mountain ranges. But at well over 6,000 feet over Mount Aspiring was a different story. From there was an unobstructed view of Dunedin, and Dunedin was what was in fact the first radio station in New Zealand, which started on the 2nd of the 10th, 1922. All Chadwick had to do with his ADF was tune to the frequency and he had a bearing to Dunedin. A little while before the disappearance, Paul Beauchamp Legge, who many of you probably knew of, happened upon Chadwick in Queenstown and found him quite rattled. Chadwick said he had become stuck above cloud and only made it into Queenstown with a few litres, in those days it'd be pints or quarts or whatever, a few litres to spare. Unfortunately, Paul didn't inquire further as to how he made it down, but I now think I know how he did it. It's well known that if you tempt fate and get it away with it, chances are that you'll try the same again. You will note that this plane heard about Mount Aspiring was above the cloud, around 1150. And then I thought, well, why circle around Mount Aspiring? You can imagine it, the cloud level, and Mount Aspiring being the tallest mountain in the area, was poking out the top. The Aspiring peak was, you know, and I thought, well, initially you'd think, oh, he's just showing his passengers this mountain, but why circle for so long? And then it dawned on me, it was an old trick where if you fly to an airfield or anything like that, that's you don't know which way the wind's blowing, got no windsock or anything, you circle the airfield, or you know, try and do a bit of a square round, and you can actually see the drift and the speed of the drift as you go around it. Now above cloud you can't do that, but with something solid sticking out of the top of the cloud you can. So this is what I think he was flying round and around it to try and work out that speed. Now, if you go back to a special common denominator of all the sightings after Peter Paulson saw it fly into the Jacobs River, right through, and Mr. Condon over here heard the aircraft in the area. That was where Mount Trent was heard from. That was where Gordon Ferguson estimated 20 miles inland, but they were all above cloud or only heard it. When you get down to Mount Aspiring, heard above a cloud, and they heard it heading towards Mount Niger, which is over there. And report 34 in Lost, Mr. Lamp was climbing near Mount Iron at noon, which is a little bit of a mountain that's pretty much covered in houses now at Wanaka. And he saw the aeroplane, which meant it had to have been above cloud, and then it's below cloud, you see. So, just trying to skim through. And with an ADF, this automatic direction finding thing, it may give you the track directly towards something, but all it does is keeps the nose pointing towards it. If you've got a strong crosswind, it's going to blow you sideways. And it's something pretty important that you'd want to know when you're, if you're going to descend down through the clouds, so you don't get pushed into a hill. And so that's what I realised was the importance. You can see here, you can do a direct line straight to Dunedin, and it takes you right down that valley. So yeah, we got to Mount Iron. Yeah, probably the next slide. And at Mount Iron, he said he reported it flying into the Motatapu Valley, and so I thought, well, that's probably where he was, you know. So I did quite a bit of stuff in that, put stuff on the internet, trying to find out if anyone had found anything in there. But the next sighting was the Cadrona Hotel. I initially wrote off because, once again, it was he'd put it down as a time of 11:20. He thought he saw it, and so initially I actually thought, oh, it's got to be another aeroplane in that area. And the Cadrona one said he saw it fly towards Invercargill, and that threw me off because I thought, well, if it's flying towards Invercargill, it won't be Chadwick, you see. But you know, I've jumped somewhere here. The timing of 11:20, you've got to remember 1962 was the old wind-up watches, and I remember having one, and they were never accurate. And the big thing is, when you see an aeroplane fly over, you don't normally take note of it. You know, you don't know it's going to, if you knew it was going to go missing, you would. But otherwise it's just an aeroplane flying past. And then somebody comes along, or if several hours later, and they say, oh, did you see a plane fly through? Yeah, but I guarantee you can't give a real good accurate time unless something happened to make you think that. But anyway, this was one I pulled out in 2009, a report about the your memories. This is the biggest thing I've found, is a lot of it is more of a study of your memory than anything else. I'm trying to work out what's going on. Oh, if you go back, yeah, a bit fast. I'll just read it out. New research into the way people form memories is raising concerns about the weight placed on eyewitnesses in court cases. Professor Mary-Ann Gary from Victoria University studies how people's memory become distorted. She says most people believe their minds are like a tape recorder, but humans tend to remember the gist of events rather than the actual details. She says that means even 20 minutes after a crime has occurred, the recollections of eyewitnesses will begin to blur. Her research shows people also invent memories and believe them to be true. Professor Gary says memory very quickly becomes something that is unusable after a period of time. Memory evidence is really another kind of trace evidence. So we all look at shows like CSI, which were crime scene investigation, and see how carefully they treat the trace evidence so it doesn't get contaminated. You've got to treat memory the same way. You've got to collect it quickly and preserve it. Professor Gary says innocent people have been convicted on the power of eyewitness testimonies. There's some evidence in the US to suggest that 3 to 3.5% of all convictions for serious crimes are wrongful convictions, and about half of those would be a memory problem. And since then there's been lots more studies, and it gets even more in depth on that. So anyway, we get back to Cardrona. He saw the black twin-engined aircraft flying towards Invercargill. The fuselage painted dark blue out to and including the engines would appear black in contrast in a cloudy overcast sky. Mr Galvin said it was heading towards Invercargill, and when you look at the Cardrona Valley, the valley's heading towards Invercargill. So it doesn't mean to say he was heading towards Invercargill, you see, it just means he was flying down the valley, probably with cloud on top of the range. I spent a lot of time pondering over this, as if Chadwick had made it this far, he would easily have made it into Queenstown, as they were at that point only around 12 nautical miles away from being there, and would have most certainly have been found years ago if they'd crashed in that area because of the density of the population. Thanks to Robin's 8mm movie footage, I thought of how Chadwick seemed very keen on giving his passengers the absolutely best possible scenery to view. And if that meant burning up extra fuel and hence his profits, then that didn't seem to even be a consideration, and that was borne out in that movie set, because that was not part of his itinerary going up to Sutherland Falls, but he had the the members of the family, the people that he was taking the film knew his parents back in England, and so he was making sure they had good footage and good publicity for him by going out of his way, you see. So he was building his business. He considered the best in the world, and he was probably right at that time, and so found no problem going the extra mile to promote that business. After all, one extremely satisfied customer generates many more, a lesson many businesses today seem to have lost sight of. And so once again, where to from there? I thought that maybe he'd continue down on the eastern side of the Remarkables and then back up to the western side. Maybe he'd crash for some reason into Queenstown, into the lake at Queenstown on approach. But that just didn't seem to fit, the planes aren't that unreliable. So I thought at the time, well, I was stuck again, that's the end of the mystery, we will have to wait back and hope somebody stumbles over it. But then I noticed Chadwick's route published in Lost again, and this was an indication that Graham here informs me he did, and it's an indication taken from Chadwick's itinerary, which you'll see later, showing an indication of where it went. But the thing that stuck out to me was it said Wanaka, Cardrona, Queenstown, and then when it went over here to Lake Wakatipu. And I thought, why is it I've got them in Wanaka, well, just south of Wanaka, because Motatapu Valley goes just down through here, about there, Cardrona and then Queenstown. It just seemed a bit of a coincidence, you know. And then I realised Chadwick's selling point for this trip was a trip to Milford. Due to cloud cover in the Paringa area, making it apparently impossible to get through, it appears Chadwick has chosen to go over the top because he'd done it before. He'd worked out this new route down to Queenstown. And so it's not unreasonable to think he's still going to provide the sites of Milford. You know, we think that because he's in Milford, close to Queenstown, he would go and land there, but he didn't see he was in any problem. He was just carrying out his normal everyday thing, you know, the normal everyday course. Yeah, and this was his itinerary, but I'm just pointing out a couple of points on it. The approach to Milford Sound, this is what he sold his itinerary on. The approach to Milford Sound is made from the sea in order that passengers may more fully appreciate the majesty of this unique sound where mountains fall sheer for thousands of feet into the waterline and the Stirling and Bowen Falls thunder into the sea in a truly awe-inspiring matter. And then another important fact I came across was lunch is available at the Milford Hotel Milford, and if required should be ordered at the time of booking. And blow me down when I was reading his flight plan. There was a little section in there that we filled out, more information transmitted if required. It put down his usual route, was what he was doing, and he put 4 dinners please. It's a little bit hard to read his writing, but when you're looking for his lunches, and so he's had that he's had that transmitted down saying, look, we want 4 meals, but there were 5 people on the plane, so you just, if many of you remember, I don't know whether they still do it today, I remember the NZR buses, the driver always got a free meal. So not that that matters in this case, but it was just intriguing. Anyway, with all this in mind, I can now easily envisage Chadwick continuing on to Milford, you know. Just because one route was blocked by cloud didn't mean all hope of getting to Milford was dashed. It just meant that they would have to go a different way, and I'm quite sure they were quite keen to get to Milford to have lunch. There may have been quite a lot of witnesses that came forward saying they had seen it flying over or near Queenstown, but I could easily envisage these accounts being discounted as absurd. After all, if it was there, it would have landed, you know. And I observed a lot of that in the Aussie case, that anything the police didn't agree with, they just threw it out. With the benefit of hindsight, knowing that they were going to go missing, we would have expected Chadwick to land at Queenstown, but he didn't know that. To him, it was just continuing business as usual. And then the no radio calls, I won't get into details on this, but we'll skip over a bit. For a starter, there was no ground station in Queenstown in 1962. But there's also another possible reason, which I'll basically, to summarise it all, he had a Murphy MR60, and it was a crystal oscillator type, and all it needed was, I don't know whether Jamie's here today, but we did this in the last 10 years ago, where we proved that it was possible that the radio could get knocked off frequency very, very easy. And Jamie pointed out, when they used to test them, he said all they had to do was they had the radio on the bench here in Christchurch somewhere, and he said they had a little rubber mallet or wooden mallet, and they would not tap the radio, they'd tap the table it was sitting on, because he said it would throw it off if it was going to go off. And he says they were just so sensitive, you just couldn't predict whether it would stay on frequency. And he said it was very possible that they somewhere, even not long after they took off, they hit some pretty severe turbulence and it bumped the radio off frequency. And so this is a good possible explanation why they never heard anything. Anyway, the next one. Now, if you check out his itinerary route, he says after leaving Milford, the route follows the Claudia River and crosses the Homer Saddle, and that's here's Milford, Claudia River, crosses the Homer Saddle, where there's an excellent view obtained of Mount Christina, which is there, Lakes Ferguson, Gun, and the Hollyford and Ellington valleys, all these valleys through here. And then Lake Wakatipu, which is 1,020 feet above sea level, comes next with this historic Queenstown nestling at the junction to the, into the Lake Wakatipu. And that sort of shows the route. Okay, next one. This route that I worked out fulfills that. You're going through there and you go up through the Caples Valley. Next one. I had for a long time suspected Caples Valley as being part of a favoured route between Milford and Queenstown, and was thrilled to find, and I'll explain why shortly, and was thrilled to find evidence in this and amongst the extra offcuts that fortunately Robin had kept. Note, this is the one. He's on a right-hand turn. So what I've done is taken clips off the movie. That's why it's all out of sequence. I've sort of joined them together just to follow it. And if you go to the next one, this is the Google Earth image, because I've never actually taken a photo up there, obviously. Here's the image here, and if you look through here, this is where all this through here was filled with cloud, right up through there. So he was heading for that valley and suddenly had to hook a right-hand turn to go up the Greenstone because he couldn't get in there. Next one. The reason I was mainly interested in if Chadwick used the Cable Valley as part of his usual route was because since 2016 we've been trialling a device supposedly uses the atomic light frequencies that are captured in a photograph, in this case satellite imagery, that are unseen to the human eye. I could go into this, the whole subject, but I won't. But that's the way I understand it. Whether I've understood it right, I don't know, because that's not my forte. It's shown much potential with minerals underground, but never used for what we're trying to do. So it's all pioneering stuff. And he offers us all this free of charge to me because he said if he can prove it, of course, he's got more big sales. Anyway, this is. He's a Kiwi engineer living in Australia. He sent me a spot in the Caples Valley. He had found, this is right at the word go, believing it to be HNW, the helicopter that was missing. And, I actually thought, this immediately discounts his device, you see. And then, so I informed him, well, sorry mate, that helicopter was found 4 years ago, I think, at that stage, and so it couldn't possibly be. But he said, he rang me up and he said he felt we really should check it out, as even his mate in America who had the same device came up with the same spot, and close by, I've jumped myself somewhere here, but he sent me this GPS spot anyway, that he said there's something there, and he picks it up by the minerals, aluminium, metal, etc. But he said the big thing that got me was he said there's also a weak signal of diamond and gold there, and I'm thinking that's like an honeymoons, So anyway. Due to various reasons, I could go into great detail while we put more weight on that, but once again, time. Due to various reasons, we've never been able to get in there to check it out, mainly due to the distance and isolation of the place. Instead, we've been trying to prove and disprove the device on an easier to get to missing plane, which was the Cherokee 6 EBU, which Judy Barrett, who's here, saw it up at fly out at Lake Moeraki, out over the sea, turn around and go back over the top of her. And she used to fly gliders and everything, and her husband was aircraft maintenance engineer, so she would have known. Anyway, due to various Yeah, anyway, Richard's saying hurry up. Now, my original possible explanation for these hits in the Caples Valley, going by what Paul Legg told me, I thought, well, it seemed a logical place at the time because he'd done 150 trips down there, so he must have recognised all the mountains, even if it was anything that was poking above a cloud, he would have known where he was. And I thought, he's lined himself up on these mountains and descended down through the clouds, especially as, even though it can't see it, it goes straight into the Wakatipu, so there's no end on the valley, so you've got a place to go once you get down through there. Which ties up with this device. They put this position there. Anyway, however, you topped it, but however, that would have been out of to going into there would have been a desperation situation for him because he's got just go down between the mountains, hope like crazy you don't bang into anything. Whereas the other one back up at Mount Aspiring is something he's actually planned, and more logical to have happened. The circled area here is where the device coordinates were, and as you can see, just looking at that, just a possibility, there was a report which we'll go into later of northwest winds coming in, strong northwest wind out at the coast. So presuming there was a northwest wind, he may have come up here, seen cloud here, and did a hard right-hand turn and stalled it into the hill. That was just a way of doing it. Now, Jules Tapper and his brother checked out this area in his 22 for us, and his email back was finally managed to get a flight into the Caples in calm weather. The site was carefully flown over and around for nearly half an hour, and nothing unusual spotted. The site is just over 3,000 feet and relatively open but steep beach forest, so it would have been quite hard to see anything unusual after 60 odd years with the old colours of a wooden fabric aircraft. Every time we go past, I'll keep a deco, so he's keeping an eye on that for us. Next one. But there's yet another possibility put to me by James Scott, who's down the back there somewhere, a well-known West Coast helicopter operator who's helped us out tremendously over the years. There's a wealth of local knowledge of the West Coast, and I've found him hardly ever wrong. In fact, he's proved me wrong quite a few times. So anyway, to cut a long story short, he rang me up and was talking about this report of the fishing boat, Miss Geraldine, saw smoke in the bush behind Big Bay from a position of straight out from St Anne Point, about a mile from Sound Mouth. They steamed for about 3 hours to get closer. They determined it as Davy Gunn mustering cattle. But there's, however, a couple of problems with this. Number one, Davy Gunn drowned on Christmas Day 1955 in a river crossing accident, which was, 7 years before they disappeared. Number two, from his position on the fishing boat, it puts Big Bay 20 nautical miles over the horizon, and the bush behind Big Bay they couldn't possibly see. To top this off, Mason, the skipper, reported it was blowing a 25 to 30 knot wind, southwest wind. Smoke in calm conditions normally only rises to around 1,000 to 1,500 feet, and so in that wind a lot less. So the smoke they saw was not from out the back of Big Bay, so it was simply impossible. However, given Mason the benefit of the doubt, due to these reasons, any smoke he saw, he had to have been a lot closer. Number four, however, that again then becomes more confusing. As he said, they steamed for 3 hours to get closer. 3 hours steaming with a 25 to 30 knot tailwind at say as little as 5 knots. Boat speed would have placed them at Big Bay, and if the smoke was closer, if it was still there after 3 hours, it must have been a big fire to go for 3 hours, you'd think, then they would have steamed well past its position. Next one. This gives us another scenario, which back to the itinerary, basically, rather than reading it out. He was hell-bent on giving them the views of coming into that lake, and I've been around there. It's pretty impressive because you fly along and you're looking at big mountainous faces, and all of a sudden here's a big sound. And you go in and the hills just go vertically straight into the sound. Anyway, and the orange dots indicated that was just an indication of it. I simply can't envisage Chadwick missing out on the opportunity to treat his passengers in an awe-inspiring manner at the majesty and beauty of this unique Sounds entrance, as he said. So I don't think it went in this way. Yeah, the next slide. To fulfil that, it meant he would have had to come round and come in through the entrance. So to me, in this scenario, he's come up the Capels Valley into the Hollyfoot Valley, carried on here and tried to cut the corner around back here into Milford, so that fulfills all the conditions. He's sold the itinerary, sold the whole flight on. Then back to the Miss Geraldine, and the view from a mile out from St Anne Point, looking toward out the back of Bay, I put it here on Google Earth, the red line indicates it, and for smoke to be seen, as you can see, that's the line there, gone down in 3D, it means it must have been somewhere up on that hill there that he's seen the smoke. Well, they've seen it. Yeah, which then, when you work it all out, the fire was somewhere between those 2 points. Next slide. Yep. Some of this I can skip, I think. Yeah, James, as James pointed out, maybe this fire was of AFB. You know, there was planes flying through there looking for fire, but you know, I don't know whether I covered it here, but I think the fire was actually lit later, which is another subject. But anyway, I've just included this one, you look at it later yourself. I've just put the approximate times. He should have been down around the Kaipo about 1:08, in the Capels Valley about 12:49. Next slide, Richard. Now, I had all this, and then it suddenly dawned on me. I remember back in 2005, I had a Dr. Stan Mulvaney contacted me, and he said they were tramping up in this area through here in 2002, and they saw aircraft wreckage up on the side of a hill, and they took bearings, and he sent me the coordinates to all that. Yeah, they saw it with binoculars. There was a whole group of them. They all looked and said it was aircraft wreckage. Anyway, next one. Yeah, in December 2008, we were sponsored by Shell Aviation from a helicopter flight from Hastings to Milford and return on an aerial missing aircraft search as a result of, I thought it was, it doesn't matter, but we were sponsored by it. And we actually flew into that valley, and it was quite funny because I've even got the video footage I took in that valley, and blow me down about, I think, yeah, about a year later, TV3 did I think it was TV3 did I think it was the missing program on the missing BMP that went missing, and they had been in exactly the same place, and I could recognise all the same rocks, and I had all the footage, could have saved them a lot of money. But anyway, the only flaw I can see in the Kaipai scenario is that if the Mayday heard on AKTV2, which you'd need to read my book about, if it was heard on TV for survivors on the Dragonfly, which was later in the afternoon, then the accident had to be survivable, so any fire that occurred may well have been purposely ignited in an attempt to attract attention. So whether a wing main, and there was a wing main spar, he broke the wing main spar, pulled Bosham leg when the plane AFB was in Masterton, which showed maybe a weakness there. So, and that was the theory, that maybe he hit this wind and broke the spar, and that's what caused the accident, you know. But who knows? But so, you know, whether that was survivable, who knows? But obviously, if somebody transmitted a Mayday call later in the day, it had to be been survivable for somebody at least. Anyway, summing up, on a careful analysis of Robin's 8mm movie, Chadwick had no hesitation to fly above cloud if it presented a better way to get to his destination. Over the 150 odd trips down to Milford, he would have been fine-tuning the flight to give the best views, always looking for a better way to do the course, especially if he got hung up halfway down and couldn't continue the course. He'd look for ways of getting around it. from Fox South into the Paringa area is into rising ground that often would have been impassable due to low cloud. I think his intention on this day was to fly over the top of the cloud, was obstructing the flight down through the Paringa area in the hope of coming out in the clear again near Haast, as he did in Robin's video. The track from Jacobs River to Mount Aspiring comes within 6 miles of his usual turning point, which was 10 miles. He always flew 10 miles inland from Haast anyway. But I think in this instance, there was, when he got down there, was complete cloud cover, so he's carried on and went over to Mount Aspiring and worked out what he had done once before and got away with it. And in fact, I think, you know, it looks like he got away with it again.
Not advising that anyone should do it. Anyway, from that point on, it was simply he was just continuing on his normal route to Milford, be it via the east coast arrival, a Milford arrival route, I just called it. As a result of this, I now believe there's 2 new areas that need to be checked out with boots on the ground. One was Capers Valley and the Kaipo Valley. But since then I've sort of thought the Kaipo Valley, people saw wreckage. Whether it was moraine or not, I don't know, but which often is mistaken for wreckage, but they saw something and something needs to be checked out there. Whereas Capers Valley is still unproven technology, so, you know, if I was going to do it, it'd be into that one. So I'm hoping somebody will do it for us. So. But anyway, I think, this is the valley there, and there's an airstrip here and a dock hut there, so it's not that far from it, so it wouldn't be hard to find, to check out. So I think that's the end of it. Yeah, boss, good.
Can we express our thanks to Gavin Gibbons? We just have a few minutes for Gavin to answer any immediate questions before we break for a cup of tea. Just remember Gavin's website, Find Lost Aircraft. Just come and stand up here with me again. Yeah, the card's there too. So look, just quickly, questions, specific questions, and Gavin will give us some succinct answers.
James.
You were saying about being south around Milford being cloudy. In one of these books somewhere, I can't quite find it, the cannons that passed saw a plane flying inland past Waikato.
Yeah.
Clear blue skies.
Yeah.
So that indicates that front has gone through.
Yeah.
And it's clear from the south.
Yeah.
The other piece in some of these books I read where Ken Eden flew from Christchurch to Haast, filled up and flew into Arawara.
Yeah.
Then it said that there's no one phoned him up and said the plane was missing. But we can't phone somebody up in Arawara.
Yeah.
So what's the story there? Did anybody ever get the right of, Ken Eden flew filled it up, then flew into Arawara to go hunting?
Yeah.
How they did contact the only side the plane was missing?
To say his plane was...
The Dragonfly was missing.
I see. I don't think he knew the plane was missing at that point.
One of these books that
did it?
That they called up Ken Eden to say, look at the plane, but didn't know it was missing. How did they do this? I mean,
yeah, I think that would have been... I think it was.
It's not lost.
No, it's not lost. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go.
He was seen at Jacobs, he was seen at Pringa, he was seen at Maraki, probably seen at Haast, climbing.
Yeah.
There wasn't any aircraft between Ken Eden and that plane was up. Ken Eden needed the curve to go up to Arawara. He would have been flying 3,000, 4,000 feet to go into Arawara. So in this case, that he actually got to Haast and was climbing somewhere south from there.
Yeah, that's going by. A lot of the time it's just going by memories of people that recorded later, and that's where some of the confusion comes in. But to be honest, I mean, I'm only going by what seems to stack up to what was written in the report. The Buchanans, I actually was talking to one of them because there was two lots sitting down there. And one of them, I asked him, well, what did you actually see? They were both on the same bridge, I think. And he said, I saw a little dot going along the hill. And so they couldn't positively identify it. Ken Eden flew through there. We know he flew down through that way. And so if they had seen a plane, and there was Ken Eden flew through, and then the Dragonfly flew through. They should have seen 2 planes. Why they only reported 1 plane?
He wouldn't be at 3,000 or 4,000 feet they presumed he was at that height. I don't know. You know, I mean, it's one of those things. You're working on people's memories and whether they're telling you the right information. But a lot of these sightings on the east coast was Ken Eden coming down or hearing down the Christchurch through coming and landing, going through the 100 pass or whatever.
I think most of the sightings down the east coast was either Ken Eden or the DC-3, and that's all written, covered in the book. So, and I don't know whether I covered it. I'm not trying to prove or disprove anyone's theory here. It's just I'm presenting what I've come up with since writing the book, since doing lots of searches, and what I just come up preparing for here, you know, and it's a whole new...
Any more questions?
Might work, Any more questions?
Has anyone heard the record?
No. Nobody's been in the on for.
When was that? Just for
Sorry? Oh, sorry. Has anyone verified that wreckage? And as far as I know, nobody has. There's been 2 helicopter flights over the top of there in Hobart, and that's about it. Yeah.
My name is John Moore. We had a hotel at Harry in the mid-2000s, and we had the helicopter who did the ground radar helicopter going right through the whole area.
Oh, that was the magnetometer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Has any research been done about
I chased that one up, and I'm not totally convinced, but I mean, there's only so many things I can do. But I was told I chased them up. Sorry? Oh, he wanted to know there was a big magnetometer search done right down the west coast, paid for all by us taxpayers, I might add. And has anyone checked all that out? And I checked it out, and the fact that I got hold of the helicopter pilots that were doing it, says, can you send this to us? And he says, unfortunately, at the end of the day, we delete everything above ground. So, and they were looking for minerals. So that was all gone. I don't know if it's true or not. But I've never had more time to find out. Colin?
Kevin, I'd like to raise a question and the conjecture around the seatbelt that...
I forgot to mention it, sorry.
What I'd like to bring to people's attention is that the people that rebuilt the Dragonfly at Mandeville says that the seatbelt is not
People that rebuilt the Dragonfly at Mandeville reiterated that the seatbelt that was found on the beach at the Saltwater by Ray was not conducive with a seatbelt from an Dragonfly, de Havilland Dragonfly aircraft. Refuting that is I contacted the de Havilland Museum in London, and they put me on, this guy called me in the evening, whose name was Henry Labouchier. Now Henry Labouchier he said, I know all about that missing aircraft. He was an engineer here at Hereward in the early days for airwork in the 60s, and he witnessed Brian Chadwick and the plane leave that particular morning, so he was very familiar with it, and he was very familiar with flying up and down. Now he has rebuilt 3 of these Dragonfly type aircraft in the past few years. He's just recently completed rebuilding a Dragonfly for a private French collector guy, and when I sent him the photographs of the seatbelt, he said that seatbelt is from the middle left-hand seat of the Dragonfly, and he was adamant about that. It's a shame the Dragonfly wasn't here today, because I wanted to see that metal bracket, shoulder harness type bracket, and as he said, the the domed seat nuts that are on the backing plate of that particular seat. He said they were conducive as to what de Havilland used at the time. And I said, why were they domed? And he said the seating was so tight in the Dragonfly that the domed backing nuts were made so that you wouldn't rip your dress or your pants or whatever when you're exiting the aircraft or entering the aircraft, etc. And a lot of people have asked me about the seatbelt as to why it's not the traditional grey and why it's got a pink reddish tinge to it, and I attribute that directly to the tannins in the Ohini material or saltwater river where it was found washed up on the beach. But we have a son that flies up in Canada, and he also had the seatbelt, the good photos that I sent to him, to the de Havilland agents up in Canada. He knew an old aircraft engineer up there, and that same aircraft engineer reiterated that it's a Dragonfly seatbelt from way up in Canada. But again, without being repetitive, we have this conjecture of someone saying yes it is, two people saying yes it is, particular people in New Zealand saying no it's not. But I'd just like to raise that anyway and share that.
So yeah, we've got a lot of people probably don't know about the seatbelt that was found down the west coast, the Fox River entrance, I think it was, and that's what the police are about to do a massive search down there because they think there's a fair amount of evidence that it could be from it. So let's hope so. You know, but as I've always said, I don't care who finds it, so long as somebody finds it. More questions?
Well, thank you again, Gavin and folks. Look, I know that we've been chatting, you want to do it, and you can also talk to Gavin afterwards. We'll break for a cup of tea. Now, the cafe's in the corner. You can go right through the back door there, though, and there's complimentary tea and coffee as well. We'll be back in about sort of 20 minutes, so 25, 2:45, we'll be underway with our next presentation. Thank you. If we can just have your attention again, do feel free to grab that cup of tea and coffee just through the door or at the cafe. And it's my pleasure now to introduce Bobby Reeve and for this second presentation. Just remember there's the paper from Blue Bone that will follow this one. There's a hard copy there on the table if you don't already have it. Ready to go. Please welcome Mr. Bobby Reeve.
Yeah, okay. Get closer. Is it turned up? That's the start of us. That's what we've been doing for 14 years. All started because of the book. I knew Chadwick through selling a yacht to him back in 1960, and I also met him again at the airport in the hangar one afternoon, and I spoke to him for about 2 hours. A very pleasant person, very interested in what I was doing because I was interested in photography then. And then it sort of faded away and it was all forgotten until a film we were doing about the Kingston Flyer, and we went to Croydon Aircraft Company because I wanted a tiger moth to fly over the Kingston Flyer at the same time as it came up the hill. And I happened to see the book in the bookcase at Croydon Aircraft Company. I looked at it and I said to Colin Smith that I knew that person, that's the honeymoon plane. Anyway, he wanted $70 for it and I didn't want to pay $70, so I left it. And I went out to the bus and my family said to me, "Did you get the book?" And I said, "No." He wanted $70 for it and it was a bit dear. They said, "Well, you'll regret it if you don't buy it." 14 years of our life is gone now because of the book. Anyway, it's been exciting, it's been adventurous, and all the way through we've had a trail. We've followed, it's like following a paper trail. We, first of all, in 2008, we went up to have a look and see where most of the real sightings were, where they were quite identifiable, which was up in the Hopkins River, which leads into the Huxley. And we had a look at it. I remember looking at the mountains and thinking, what are we trying to do here? So we came back and we decided the first thing we would do would have to be do huge research. So we spent about 4 months travelling around the country, interviewing pilots. We interviewed Don Middleton, who was in the search, who was flying in the Hopkins River in the Huxley area. We've interviewed Paul Legg, who you heard the name before. We interviewed Bill Small, who was the co-pilot on the DC-3 at the time. And by getting all these interviews and things like that, we're able to sit down and listen to them. And even now, we go back to them with what they're saying, and it makes sense the further we've come into it. We went up with the caravan, as you saw, in 2010 and stayed in there for 6 weeks. We grid searched the whole of the main Huxley, both sides, and then we've been in there 7 times, 7 trips we've done now. And in 2015 we came across a woman's high heel shoe. It's what they called a club heel. We knew as soon as we saw it, it was wasn't supposed to be there, it was in a place it shouldn't have been. We're not saying that the shoe came from the plane, and we're not saying it didn't. It was in an area where it could quite well be. The sister of the woman that was on the plane, I rang her when we got home and I said to her about the shoe. She said, described it, she said, "It sounds like my sister." And I said, "The only problem is it's quite a small shoe." She said, "That's all right." She said, "I've got small feet too." So the shoe is part of the mystery, but then we've done more research and more research. And then Richard Wall got in touch with us about this person who said that he saw the plane fly into the Huxley. So we went and we did the interview with him too. And can you put that interview on, please, Simon?
My name is John Patrick Gordon, and at the time of the incident I was employed by the New Zealand Forest Service as a colour, and I was in the block which took in the whole of the Hopkins, the Maitland and the Temple Valleys in the Ohau region. Yes, I was definitely at the Red Hut on the 12th. I'd just come up the day before from the base camp, and I'd come up and left a message because there was no one at the base camp when I was there, and I left a message for my partner who shared the block with me, because we always worked at least in pairs to keep an eye on the safety measures. And he was going to come up the next day and meet me at Red Hut. And I was there on the at Red Hut, and the very next morning, the morning of the 12th, I was up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I went up the river valley, up the Hopkins Valley, to shoot and hunt the little valley floors, or the little patches of tussock and grasslands that comes out from the main forest. And that day I shot 5 deer in the morning, and I'd brought certain quantity of the meat back so that we had plenty of meat for a week or two. And after I got back to the red hut, I put the meat down and covered it up so the flies couldn't get it, and I went down to clean myself up, because after you've gut an animal or several animals and you've taken the back steaks off of the legs and cut them, the legs off and things like that, you get a certain amount of blood over you. So I was in the nearest part of the Hopkins River that bends right in close to the base of the terrace in which the hut is built on, the red hut is built on. And I was down at the base of that terrace in the small side stream that comes along from the main river, and was washing my face and washing my hands and hair and getting all this caked blood off me. And at that stage, this is when I heard this really rowdy aeroplane coming up the valley. And I thought, what's anybody doing up there today? I mean, it's such a wild day, you know, and there's a heavy overcast, and there was a ceiling on the overcast, as you quite often do in valley, the big valleys, the big Canterbury and Otago valleys. But in saying that, there's always these little kind of dips in that ceiling that kind of drop below the actual ceiling, and clouds of mist and things like that. I would say that the base of that cloud base was about 1,000 feet.
Right.
Maybe 1,200, you know, it's hard to be exact. While I was, just after I finished and sat and took up the noise, that I was trying to find the direction of the noise, mainly by ear, because I couldn't see anything at that time, and I latched onto the aircraft noise, and it was just crossing the mouth of the Huxley, which was directly opposite the hut and where I was standing. And then I heard the engines go up a note. It was working hard, the engines were working hard, and I could hear this as he turned, and I believe and sure he went up the Huxley, and he was aiming to do that, and that's when I heard him. But I didn't actually see anything of any consequence. All I did see was shapes of a fuselage passing through these very low, puffy, drizzly bits, but I couldn't detect whether it was a twin-wing aircraft at that stage, because it was too difficult to see anything in that murk and mist. But the noise was really loud, and I know the exhaust pipes on the gypsies that were in those types of aircraft discharged back, you know, and so as he turned to go up, he turned, and therefore I'd be in a full direct line for that noise, and that's why it was so loud, and I could hear it was working so hard, you know, and that's how I knew it was going up the Huxley, because he was heading that way, and after a period of time it died away, and I couldn't tell, you know, by the time it would have got up to the Huxley Forks, I couldn't tell which way it went at that stage. But I knew it went up the Huxley main valley. Yeah.
Could it have got out in those weather conditions? Could it have got over those 8,000 foot mountains?
Well, I wouldn't even want to have been in those conditions in the plane. I thought, you know, why is he even here? You know, this is this craziness. You know, I thought at the time, because I'd had a bit to do with aircraft by then, and no, I didn't think he. Well, I knew he might have been going for Broderick Pass, and it goes over and drops down into the Landsborough. But then into one of the massive valleys of the South Island, which is the Landsborough, goes for miles, and it's along a fault line, and you know, superb valley. If you got over there, we wouldn't be doing this now.
No, there's nowhere else, is there, that he could have got over those mountains?
Well,
in that weather condition.
The only way out is back down the way he came. There's no other way out of the Huxley Basin.
No.
So he would, if he came down, if he survived the Huxley Basin, then he could have come down the way he'd come up, because that's the only way out. But if he'd done that, we would have heard him come out through the main Huxley into the Hopkins, but no one did that, so he didn't come out of the main, south of the main forks.
So the other thing now is, how were you not at the base camp with the other deer cullers?
Because I was just coming back from getting 4 impacted wisdom teeth out, and I wasn't allowed to leave Dunedin until the dentist was happy that I never had an infection in those, and I arrived the day before the incident, and when I got to the base camp no one was there, and while I was up the valley and no one else was.
Right. And so you knew nothing about it?
No, until when Evan Blanche arrived, and then at the same time as he arrived up there at Red Hut, and the following day, aircraft were buzzing everywhere, and they started roaring up and down the main Huxley and up the Hopkins and all around both sides of the valley, searching everywhere.
I had a problem with this when we first heard about it. I didn't believe it because it was so long ago. How come he never came forward when Evan Blanche came forward and all of those came forward with the reports? And anyway, when I rang him on the phone and I'd spoken to him, he told us about his wisdom teeth, and he told us that he left a note at the base camp on his way up for Evan Blanche. So I rang Evan Blanche, who we'd known since 2008, and I said to him, remember, I didn't say anything about wisdom teeth or anything. All I said was, did you know John Gordon? And he said, yes. He said, he was my shooting partner. We talked a wee bit there. He said, matter of fact, he said, he borrowed my truck to go down to Dunedin. He said he had bad wisdom teeth. He said he was quite a sick man. I knew then. I said to Evan Blanche, I said, how much can I trust this of what he's saying? He said, you can trust every part of it. He said he's not that sort of person to say something that wasn't true. That's how we came to the conclusion that what he was saying was right. And so now it's given us a height, it's given us a direction, and we know by living up there, those mountains around there are 8,000 feet high right round. He went over, John Gordon estimated the cloud level to be about 1,000 feet. We say, well, maybe 1,200 feet. He's 2,000 feet off sea level at the Red Hut, which means that's 3,200 feet. Broadwick Pass is 700, you'd have to be 7,000 feet to get through it. How's he going to climb another 3,000 feet in 4 miles? You can't do it. It's impossible. So, is he in there? Well, he didn't come out. So, that's the lead that we have now. If it wasn't for John Gordon, we would be still hanging on a string somewhere. But now, because we have a height, a direction, and even Evan Blanche said the same thing. The deer colours were the first ones to put the report in. And there was, I think, 5 other farmers heard it fly up the lake. And they put their reports in at almost the same time. The Ben Lyon station, which is on the eastern side of the Hopkins River, the workers there said they heard it fly into the Huxley. So where are we now? That's where we are. We have made a documentary film of everything we've done right through, right up till now. We've got our ups and downs in it, we've had problems, we've had accidents, we've had all sorts of stuff. And we've got to a stage now where it's so far in that we're having difficulty even getting in there. Television came and spoke to us 2 years ago, and the first thing I said was that we need help. We can't do it alone. We had a father and son who were mountaineers. They went up there, and they went right up to the top, took photographs, and they said that it could very well be up there. We had an aircraft crash inspector come to us after the television report, and we showed him the shoe. He took one look at the shoe and he said, that shoe's been in ice. So, where are we? That's about where we are at the moment. If anybody can prove me wrong, then I'll accept it. Might be hard, but that's where we are. But we're looking for help. Richard's been good because he's been with us all the way through everything that we've done, kept in touch, and I can't say much more. I think the story's all been told so many times that it's...
Ask for any questions, Bob.
Yeah, any questions?
Yep. I'll just raise one. I mean, could that aircraft that was seen and heard flying up there that day be the Ken Eden and the Super?
No, no. Remember that Ken Eden's report was a second-hand report too. That's another thing. It's not a first-hand report, it's a second-hand report. It wasn't Ken Eden that gave the report.
No, because nobody actually saw that plane that day, did they?
Where?
Where that guy saw it.
It was seen.
Yeah, only through the fog of the tower.
Yeah, right. Twin engine. Ken Eden had a single engine.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And the Super was quite easy to climb from 3,000 feet to 7,000 feet in 4 or 5 miles too.
You're not in that weather in those mountains. Well, he didn't go from there that way anyway. He went through from Rangiora.
Well, nobody actually knows where he went that day.
No, that's the problem with it.
Yeah, so it could have been that.
Well, all the ones up the river, up the lake that saw it, all said it was twin engine. So how do you prove it was a single engine? You can't. This basically is the research that you have to do before you start doing anything like this. We've done years of research and spoken to pilots. We've flown through the Broadwick Pass 3 times with air safaris and at different heights. We took the Dragonfly down at Mandeville, we took that up into the sky and we did a pattern in the sky, the same as flying up the Huxley, to see if it was possible for it to climb in that distance. And although it's got slightly bigger engines, it struggled, and that was on a fine day. So we've done all those sort of tests and filmed those tests.
Any other questions, Bob?
Yeah, anything else?
Yes. Are you the one who found the shoe?
Yes. No, my 2 sons found the shoe.
Oh, okay. Has there been any attempt to find DNA traces around the seams and the toe?
Yes, there has, but it all costs money. Anybody who wants to do that is very welcome to do it. We put it on the internet on a shoe, what do you call it, Simon? It's a shoe site, wasn't it? Worldwide, to see if somebody could tell us the make of the shoe. We know the make of the shoe. It's a Mustang, made in America. It's got clasps over the front of it. We haven't been able to get anybody to tell us. There was a person who dealt in Christchurch with old shoes and things, and when I got in touch with him, no, he said, I'm not interested. He said, I don't want to know about that. You know, so we've had to take the shoe out of the equation. Take it right out of it. We still know it's in the Huxley. See what I mean? So the shoe is only an additive now. It's not the end all and be all of everything. Any more questions?
Was that shoe that was found, was that the shoe for the period of the day that the crash was?
What?
Was the shoe that was found as old as the period of the day?
Yeah.
People wearing those shoes?
Well, we went onto the internet in quite a big way and we found that those shoes are timeless. That type of shoe is timeless. They were actually made in the late 1800s. It's a woman's shoe, quite a sturdy sort of a shoe. We can't say that it came from the plane, and we can't say it didn't. But we'd like somebody to come along and tell us that for certain that no, it couldn't have been. Tell us how it got there for a start. I mean, it hasn't walked up there because the sole is nice and smooth. You'd never walk up there in that shale rock, it'd be cut.
What time of day did the hunter hear the plane going up the Huxley?
Well, he didn't actually say what time.
Just repeat that question.
Oh, what time of day did the hunter hear the plane going up the Huxley? He'd been up the river in the morning hunting. I would imagine, being a hunter myself, that he wouldn't have got back till probably 9, 10 o'clock. He dropped off the meat, he had a wash, he did all that. It could have been any time between 10 and 12 o'clock. We don't know. A lot of the reports have got there around midday or something like that, but the trouble is that in the situations like that, people don't look at their clocks, their watches, to know exact. But any more?
Excuse me. The word circa comes to mind here. You said they've been manufacturing these boots since the 1800s.
Yes.
And we know what a modern boot is. It's from the circa era 2000, and then we have these old ladies' witches type boots you see in 1800s type circa. So has somebody tied down this boot to a certain era or circa? Has that been identified?
The only thing we can find with that, I can't repeat that, it's too long. The only thing we can find with that is the clasps over the front, the metal clasps that are on it. It was a 1950s design. But strangely enough, we can't get anybody who can come along and say, I tell you what, I've done a lot of watching women in supermarkets. Looking at their shoes. We've got one here. Same shoes. You know? Eh? Don't bring the seatbelt up.
Why not?
Why not? No.
Any other questions?
Any more questions? No.
I'm not familiar with the Tuxley Valley, but is it wide enough that you could have done circuits to gain the height, to clear the mountains? Because I know when we flew into Milford Sound, when we flew out again, we had to actually go into a basin, and the pilot flew around several times just to gain enough height so that we could hop over the saddle.
Yeah, but you would have been in fine weather.
Yeah, reasonably.
Right, he was in dirty weather, it was raining. Cloud was down to about 1,000 feet. The thing is, we've found up in there, as the wind blows the clouds up into the valleys, it builds up and gets higher and higher. So what he's done, because the deer colour obviously saw him through the thin cloud, he was watching the riverbed. He must have been watching the riverbed to get up there. And as you go up the valley, remember, you're climbing, the valley's climbing too. It's going up all the time. He would have run into more and more cloud going up. Now, why didn't he turn? I don't know. Why did he go in there? I don't know. I mean, they're all questions that we'll only know when it's found. Any more? Yeah.
Good.
Thank you, Bobby and Adam and Simon. Can we express our appreciation? Aren't those images amazing of the Land Rover and the caravan? She just about floated down the river, didn't it? Well done, Bobby.
Just a minute. That's not all of it. That's only a piece out of the film itself. But like I say, we had a marvellous time. Another thing I must say too, I must say thank you to my family, because I could never have done it. They have backed us all the way through. My wife Lindley here, I'd get upset, I'd say can't do it, forget it. She'd say come on, we're going to do it. And things like that. That was what kept us going and still is keeping us going.
Is the caravan still there?
No, it's gone.
Thank you, Bobby. Now we move to the last presentation today. Now, I'm going to ask Graham just to grab the copies. Everyone will need a copy of Lou Bone's report. Just put up your hand if you don't have a copy, and Graham will part you. Right, so a whole lot of guys down the back there. Now, I have it's a short presentation, it's about 15 minutes, on behalf of Lou Bone, who lives in Mapua and Nelson, who has done tremendous searching initiatives as well. He can't be here today, so he has prepared the paper that you've got there. You can read, some detail, of course, and look at his website, which I think is at DH90, I think it's listed there, dh90.info, and you'll see a great deal more information. So Lou has, however, just prepared a few pages for me to read that is not, as I say, word for word with the report, but will give you a little bit of an explanation about his theory. In fact, I was first contacted by Lou Bone way back in the early 90s, so 30 years ago. And he believed that he had some information that came through in the years following 1962 that actually merited further investigation. So Lou made contact with a number of people whose reports he felt were credible and deserved following up. And that's one of the great dilemmas here. We have what appear to be credible reports on the east and on the west. It's a basic dilemma here, isn't it? From Lou's perspective, the credible reports deserving follow-up, and his contention is those reports centred around an area just east of Mount Aspiring. In particular, Rainbow Valley, a narrow deadhead valley running off Aspiring Flat below Kitchener Glacier. So during the 90s, Lou carried out 3 trips into the Rainbow area. First trip was by himself to sort of familiarise himself with the terrain. The second trip, based on the account of Bob Gibson, and Bob Gibson's good friend Ian Rinke is here today. And Lou flew in by helicopter with 2 men who reported seeing something. And I think that was you, Ian, and Bob Gibson. And Bob was a professional hunter who in 1963, the year after the disappearance, was in Rainbow Valley and had seen a shiny reflection coming off something higher up in the bush. The terrain is difficult and ravined, but Bob used his bush instincts to get high above to the point where he'd seen this. He looked down and found 2 beech trees with their tops freshly cut off, as if something had crashed down on an angle through them. Due to failing light and weather, Bob could not get down the bluffs to try and find what had caused this. In his extensive backcountry experience as a professional hunter, what Bob Gibson had seen was for him totally unnatural and indicated something heavy had crashed through those tree tops. The third trip was based on the accounts of Owen Cowie and Ron King, 2 hunters. Owen Cowie, Ron King were in Rainbow Valley just 6 weeks after the Dragonfly's February disappearance. They saw a bright red/orange metallic object lying in snow on Kitchener Glacier above the valley. They photographed it from a distance across the valley. Owen and Ron flew into the area with Lou later in 1992 to point out that area. Now, coincidentally or not, this object's colour was the same as the original red-orange paintwork on the Dragonfly. Now, the slide photograph is unfortunately the original slide photograph is unfortunately too indistinct to identify the object. But a copy of Owen Cowie's photograph slide is on display over here. So Lou Bones got 4 blown up photographs over there that you also need to look at in relation to the paper you've got in hand. Lou carried out further investigations in the 90s, including interviewing several other people, including the owner of Mount Aspiring Station, a large farm station, who, together with others there at the time, had heard an aircraft circling in low, thunderous cloud around Aspiring. It's important to understand that there was no other reasonable explanation possible for the reports coming from Mount Aspiring Station. At that time, on that day, there was no other aircraft known to be operating around Mount Aspiring. What aircraft could it have been other than the Dragonfly? Paul Powell, famous author as well, was the Chief Search and Rescue Officer of the New Zealand Federated Mountain Clubs in the Otago region. He was intimately familiar with the Aspiring area from years of mountaineering and climbing activity there, and had been heavily involved in the 1962 Dragonfly effort. Paul Powell was forever convinced that the aircraft came down in this area, as were his search and rescue colleagues. And this is the account of Alan Duncan. In 1972, another professional hunter, Alan Duncan, was in Rainbow Valley. He was piloting a helicopter working for Sir Tim Wallace's deer recovery operations out of Wanaka. Alan was a very competent fixed-wing and helicopter pilot who remained in Sir Tim Wallace's employ for 27 years. He was in his helicopter flying close to the ground, chasing a deer on the Rainbow Valley eastern slopes. Rotor downwash from his hovering helicopter disturbed bushes and revealed what Duncan described as a silver wing lying on the ground. In Duncan's opinion, at the time, part of an aircraft. The late Alan Duncan has been described as a man of few words, but one revered and respected among his peers. It's of critical interest that the valley slopes where Alan Duncan had seen this is in the same proximity to where Bob Gibson had seen broken treetops. This is rugged terrain and tree and ravine with high bluffs making searching difficult. New research 2021-2022. During New Zealand's recent COVID lockdown period, Lou dusted off his file on the matter and renewed his research. This required Laker tracking down various people and carrying out numerous interviews. The research was challenging that many people from 1962 had passed on, but not all. Lou has now completed a research paper detailing the result of these new and recent investigations, in particular outlining what he believes is now a clear accumulation of evidence that Chadwick did stay on the Canterbury side of the divide. This paper includes new evidence never previously known about and major clarification of some earlier reports and their interpretation. And again, you can see some of the big blown up posters there. So copies of his 9-page research paper, I think, are what you have in your hand today. Can also be viewed and downloaded from the website at dh90.info, which fully details additional investigations related to this area. Both the website and this new research paper are very comprehensive. They need to be closely studied in order to get a full appreciation of the extent of the research and basis for Lou's final conclusions. Neither can be skimmed through. So Lou Bone's essential findings are: 1, there was strong historic evidence of aircraft debris above and in Rainbow Valley. 2, there is now new and compelling evidence that Chadwick never got across the west coast despite trying to do so at several points. 3, the extent of the new evidence derived from the observations of what is now many people illustrate a simple southern progression by Chadwick down east of the divide, though with some attempts to get across the divide to the west coast, through Mackenzie country into Huxley Valley, down south down Dingleburn, and consequently into Lake Hawea, and probably then across Lake Wanaka to Aspiring, with the flight terminating by Kitchener Glacier and Rainbow Valley below it. Essentially, Chadwick told Christchurch airport authorities that the Mackenzie was the route he had to take due to weather, and he simply took it. Lou has been seeking sponsorship for research of these eastern slopes of Rainbow Valley, and the evidence from reports by credible people clearly point to there being aircraft debris in this area. The proposed and defined search area is shown on the website and in the posters on display here today. The rough terrain requires experienced search personnel and folk familiar with rope and teamwork and professional management of the exercise. It will also require helicopter access and support and helicopter landing permits from the Department of Conservation, which administers the land. So there are some serious cost centres and logistics considerations with any organised search. Lou recently spent several months in the USA, and while there pursued possible sponsorship from a number of corporates. This included the board of de Havilland in Canada, a USA businessman with major landholding interests near Wanaka, an Australian billionaire with extensive commercial aviation interests, and some New Zealand companies. In the absence, however, of any forthcoming corporate interest, it seems likely that an organised search of this area's slopes will remain a private endeavour. So again, a reference, this is notes from Lou on display today, a poster showing the Mackenzie reports and route now traced and the general area of interest within Rainbow Valley. Lou says he'd be happy to supply further information and answer any questions, and he can be contacted at the email that's on your paper and through his website. Okay, so that's Lou's contribution, and just like Bobby Reeve and family and Gavin Grimmer, significant, practical research work over many years. So we do pay tribute to each of these folks who have done remarkable work demonstrating their commitment to try and find the dragonfly. Now, are there any sort of questions or comments? Well, I can't defend Lou's theory, but I might be able to answer them or somebody else.
Those trees that we found up the edge of the bush.
Ian, why don't you just stand up here? Stand up, just turn around.
Yes, Ian's my name. The trees we found have been cut off. The top one and the other one is a bit down a bit. It wouldn't be done with ice or snow because there's all grass tussock above the bush. It's not the other way, Mount's fire, it's just rock in there. Right. Just introduce yourself and tell me how you ended up here. Yeah, I know. They know how I got here. And it wouldn't have been any ice or snow that did those trees because there's no ground for it to hold on, only slope, you know. And that's why we reckon the plane went down there. Anyway, take it as you like.
Thank you, Ian. Ian was with Bob Gibson in the report that Lou described and in the Lost Book as well. Any other comments from anyone? Okay, folks, well, thanks for your patience today, and again, thanks to Gavin Grimmer and Bobby Reeve and Lou Bones' paper. Yes?
I can appreciate you closing down the session. I have one question, and I'm referring to the article in the press yesterday. Unless I fell asleep, I may have missed it. Have we commented today on what the police are up to on the West Coast?
Right, okay. Question about the police. The police are going to do a search in relation to what Colin was sharing, that's right, isn't it? I think it's called Operation Dragonfly from the 24th of February in relation to the seatbelt and the piece of carpet. That's correct, Colin?
That's correct.
Yeah, correct. They've been in touch with me about that, so quite a significant search. And Colin's outlined reports of some experts who say that the seatbelts from the Dragonfly, and I've had other people here today that are saying there are other experts are saying that it's not from the Dragonfly. So that's typical Dragonfly stuff, isn't it, you know? Really. So that's what we know at the moment. So look, we'll see what happens by the end of the month. Okay, well, anyone else for the last comment?
I noticed that according to the report, there were 100 personnel.
Yeah, big search, that's right, yeah. Now, folks, just a reminder, there's the last of the books, discounted prices. The Lost Book is almost out, it won't be available again. You've got Lou's big posters here, and thanks again to Ron Art with his historic photograph display, and also Jocelyn, who did such a good job in the cafe. And wonderful to have you here. I know some of you have come from all around, and some from Australia too. I'm going to ask Peter, just to say a few words. Introduce yourself, Peter.
I'll still need the mic. Okay. All right. So my name is Peter Kochis. So I am nephew of Lewis Rowan, and as you heard earlier, a number of members of my family are here. So it's a very interesting day, and thank you very much to everyone that's been involved in doing it. And it's such great passion in the room, and it's great to see such energy on what is a 61-year-old event, right? And I think you'd have to have ice in your veins to not see that this is a great story. At its core, though, it's a very human story. It's a very human tragedy. And, you know, there are 5 people missing, family members still grieving, still remembering those people. And that's at the core of this story. There's a second story here as well. And that is, you know, there are many tragedies that have happened. But this one, 61 years on, still sparks so much energy and passion that we've heard it all in the room. And it's really quite remarkable. And there are many active groups, as we've heard, many people doing analysis, a lot of sleepless nights, trekking through the bush, flying, putting up drones, so much energy going into it. You have to ask yourself, what is the motivation? I think we were joking earlier that we can rule out fame and fortune. If the Dragonfly was made out of gold, there'd be thousands of people doing it. So if we rule that one out, is it the challenge? Is it the thrill of the chase? Is it, is it the intellectual challenge of trying to solve a mystery that's been dragging on for so long? I think there has to be an element of that. Otherwise, it'd be very hard to trek through the bush for so many years. But I think the core motivation here is that there are families that deserve closure. These are young, adventurous people, lost well before their time. And it's the right thing to do. And there are people who feel that it's the right thing to do and feel that they are able to contribute to solving this mystery. And it's so wonderful as a family member to hear 61 years on that there are so many people still feeling so strongly about this. And one of the motivations for me to come here from Australia is to show that there are still people who care. There are still family members still waiting and hoping. So I'd like to say thank you to all those people that are putting in their own way, putting in energy and life into this search. It is very much appreciated. And I think I'd like to leave you with one last thought. Why this plane? There's quite a few missing planes. I don't know, as Gavin will attest to, there's people looking at other planes, but this one I think most of us would agree sparks a higher level of energy than most of the missing planes do. And I think, okay, there's the fact that it's one of the earlier ones and it's been going so long as an unsolved mystery, and there's the media latch on to the catch cries of the honeymoon and things like that. But I think what sets this one apart is the efforts of two people. Although there's so many people that put in too much effort, I would like to call out the efforts of two individuals. First and foremost is Brian Wall. Never forgot his friend and never stopped trying to solve this mystery. Instilled a passion in his family to try and solve this mystery. And secondly, it's been mentioned before, but I'll say it again, Richard, I think that book, that wonderful book that you've put together, has energised so many people and focused so much on this search. It's got that wonderful mix of technical details, enough that it can grasp the imagination of people who are interested in this sort of thing, but it also preserved the humanity wonderfully as well. So thank you from all the family members. Thank you for keeping this alive. It's not just the book, it's like the father figure for this whole movement. So well done, and thank you from everyone.
Thank you, Peter. That was a very eloquent end to the day, wasn't it? Thank you, Peter. And coming from Australia with other members of the Ryan family, and Glennis here from the Bignell family as well, we appreciate you being here to keep the story alive, and younger ones like you too, Peter. So again, thank you folks for coming out. As I say, the displays, the books, there's also Aviation Historical Society material there. You're free to linger on and chat as we round off today. So again, thank you.